Well, joining me now from Tel Aviv is Paul Hirschson. He's the spokesman for the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. I just wanted to pick up on that, the last speaker saying about this being a one-sided situation, and mention one statistic. The Israeli officials say that they have dropped so far 400 tons of explosives since the offensive began. It's worth pointing out that the whole of Gaza covers an area of just 365 square kilometres. That's over a ton of explosives per square kilometre. Can this really be described as fair and balanced response?
Thank you for having me. It's really good to be back with you. I think that the only thing I agree with your previous speaker on is the fact that this current situation was completely unnecessary. For 3 weeks prior to Israel announcing this operation, there was a dramatic escalation in the number of missiles, rockets fired from Gaza into Israel incessantly and indiscriminately into residential neighborhoods. And this was answered with nothing. So if you're comparing military might, it was Hamas and their cronies firing on Israeli civilians with zero response. And for 3 weeks we said to them, quiet will be answered with quiet, calm will be responded to with calm. And this message, both publicly and privately, we sent that message. This message was rejected out of hand by Hamas, and it was totally unnecessary for us to get to where we are today.
Can I just slightly bring you up on that point, that even though you say there are all those rockets coming over your border, not one person was killed, your response now is to kill 105 people, over 30 of whom are women and children?
Well, first of all, I'm thankful that we haven't suffered fatalities. It's not for want of trying. Hamas is committing 2 war crimes here, one of which is deliberately targeting our civilians, and the other one is, and it's proven and online and put out there by Hamas themselves, a demand of them to their civilians to act as human shields. Yes, tragically, civilians have been killed, but I think you'll agree with me. If we have, in the last 4 days, had just over 1,000 strikes on Gaza, and 100 people have been killed, including civilians, unfortunately, tragically, but I think it's clear that Israel is making every effort to avoid civilian casualties.
Well, you have an incredibly sophisticated defence system with the Iron Dome defence system. You are very much the larger power, the dominant power here. But you're still striking areas where there are, you call them human shields. The Gazans would say that's not the case. They'd say you're striking residential areas. My question really is, what's your end game? What are you aiming for here? What is it? You want to obliterate certain areas of Gaza? What are you looking for?
I'll tell you immediately, but let me just say, I mean, I assume you don't expect, just because we have a good defense system, you don't expect us to sit back and allow them to fire rockets and missiles into our civilian areas in the hope that we will continue being successful just because we've put together a good defense mechanism, because that, of course, is a silly argument on your behalf. I'll tell you what we are trying to do. We would like 3 things. The first thing we would like to do is we would like to bring a sense of calm back. We would like to get Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and some of the other renegade groups there to stop firing on our civilians. The second thing we would like to do is, unlike past occasions, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, we're not particularly in the mood for putting a band-aid on this problem. We would like to dismantle the terror machine which has been built up by Hamas, by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and by others. And the third thing we would like very much is to get back to negotiations with the Palestinians. Let me be clear, the Palestinian people are not our enemy. We would like nothing more than to resolve our differences with them and with the Arab world at large. It's in our mutual benefit, it's in our mutual interest.
But sir,
and the way for us to get back to negotiations.
As you're saying that, we are seeing on the other screen very distraught relatives of people who have been killed.
Correct.
You must recognise that you're almost fomenting more anger. You're almost driving people to want to attack Israel more by launching such an enormous offensive and seeing innocent civilian people killed.
Well, I think if you listen to the voices in Gaza, you will hear an increasing expression of deep resentment against Hamas, because it is they who caused this particular outbreak of an escalation of violence, not us. We did everything that we could to avoid it. We spent 3 weeks saying calm will be responded to with calm, and it was Hamas who chose an escalation, and we will put an end to it. It's a very difficult situation. We understand that. We're working very hard. We're making phone calls to people to tell them to move out of the way when we're about to target. We're working carefully with all the authorities, but it's not straightforward. It's not easy. And when you're up against Hamas, look, these are the ideological siblings of the ISIS people in Iraq and in Syria. These are the spiritual relatives of Boko Haram in Nigeria. They sometimes speak with a sophisticated voice, but if you listen to what they say, and if you look at what they do, Hamas, the Islamic Jihad and others, this is one of the darkest political schools of thought in modern political history.
Sadly, I'm afraid that's a completely different debate that we've run out of time for, but maybe we'll have that with you in a later date. Paul Hirschson, thank you very much for joining us from Tel Aviv.